Good evening, friends. Let us be still for a moment, just a breath, and feel after that presence. What if the reason nobody ever taught you the true meaning of "seek first the kingdom of God" is because the kingdom cannot be taught as a lesson. It can only be realized as presence. To seek is not to chase effects, improve conditions, or bargain with the infinite. To seek is to turn within and rest in the I that is God. We do not go to God for things, we go to God for God, and by grace the things arrange themselves. As we take no thought, as we refuse to fight appearances or use God as a power, the kingdom reveals itself as the only reality, here and now. If this resonates, support this work so more hearts find it. Like the video, comment a symbolic number such as 111, and subscribe. Stay with me, because in a moment I'll share the quiet practice that turns seek from reaching out to letting in, and it isn't what you think. The kingdom is not across the horizon of tomorrow. It is this very awareness contemplating itself. When Scripture says, "within," it does not point to a chamber of the human mind, nor to a sentimental feeling, but to the infinite, unbounded consciousness that is the I of your being. You do not travel to it, you relax out of the belief that you ever left it. Time has no jurisdiction in God. Therefore the kingdom cannot be scheduled, achieved, or postponed. It shines as the isness of presence, whether the senses report storm or calm. Our task is not to bring God to earth, but to awaken from the dream that God was ever absent. Do you notice how the mind wants a map, steps, minutes, techniques? That is the habit of cause and effect thinking. The kingdom is not an effect. It is the life that is causing you to breathe, the awareness by which you are noticing these words. When the mind looks for a place, it misses the presence as the looker. When it seeks a future state, it overlooks the fact that all futurity is a thought arising in the only now there is. Seeking rightly means consenting to be the witness rather than the willer. In that consent, the strain dissolves, and a gentle, quiet sufficiency begins to register as peace. You may ask, but how do I know it? You do not know the kingdom the way you know a fact about history. You know it the way you know being alive. By being it, sit, become still, and let the waves of thinking spend themselves. Notice the spaciousness that remains. That spaciousness is not empty, it is living, aware, warm with an unknown love. It is not your private property, it is the one consciousness appearing as you. Gold and its ornament are not two, consciousness and the individual are not two. When this is tasted, even for a breath, the search outward loosens. You discover that what you wanted from tomorrow was the fragrance of this presence, and it is not rationed by circumstance. Because the kingdom is present consciousness, it does not compete with the world, correct the world, or overpower the world. It reveals the world as a set of changing pictures on the screen of awareness. We do not fight the pictures, nor do we worship them. We rest as the screen. From that rest, actions are taken, words are spoken, tasks are done, yet the door is no longer a worried, separate self striving for outcomes. Grace does the doing, and it leaves no residue of pride or fear. Harmony appears not as magic, but as the natural form of a mind stayed on truth. Remember, the kingdom is not hidden behind conditions, it is hidden by the belief that conditions have authority over consciousness. Withdraw that misplaced authority. Let appearances be what they are, and abide in the felt certainty that consciousness is the only cause, law, and substance. In that abiding, the nearness of God is discovered to be the only nearness there ever was. Not attained by merit, but recognized by grace, it is glimpsed in the pause between thoughts, already enthroned at the center of being, untouched by age, opinion, or event, quietly illumining even the ordinary moments. And now the word seek loses its anxious edges. It no longer means running after effects, fixing conditions, or coaxing life to cooperate. To seek is to turn within, to pivot from the outer parade of forms to the quiet center, where the presence is already shining. Instead of pushing on the picture, we rest as the light by which the picture is seen. The moment the attention is recalled from problems, goals, and outcomes to the living eye, without demand, without outline, the kingdom is given opportunity to bear witness to itself. Chasing effects is a confession of separation. Why am outside the good and must get it? Turning within is a confession of oneness. I am in the midst of God, when God is in the midst of me. The first approach breeds fatigue, because it puts the burden on a personal self to maneuver reality. The second loosens the shoulders, softens the breath, and brings that inward hush in which grace becomes tangibly evident. You are not declaring or affirming to make something happen. You are consenting to be where reality already is. How does this look in the practicality of a day? Pause. Close the eyes if you can, open the inner ear regardless. Without petition or mental bargaining, rest in the awareness that the Father within doth the works. Let thoughts pass unhandled. Let feelings arise unjudged. Let the body breathe itself. Beneath the waves of thinking, notice a quiet, alert stillness. Lean there, not to get a result, but because that is home. You are not doing a practice. You are ceasing to do. So that being may be obvious, the temptation will come to use spirit as a tool to visualize a certain answer, to mentally force a situation to improve. That is still chasing effects. It is subtle idolatry, taking the name of God in order to serve a picture. Drop the pictures. Drop the outlines. Let the infinite be infinite. When the mind no longer dictates terms, the kingdom reveals forms you did not know to ask for, in timings you could not have engineered, leaving a trace of quiet rightness that needs no defending. Turning within is not passivity, it is the most intimate kind of participation. In the inner stillness, a word may arise or a nudge to call, to write, to act. Follow it without strain. Other times, nothing arises but rest, and in that very rest an invisible adjustment is already underway. Take no thought. Is not neglect. It is trust in the invisible order that feeds the birds and clothes the lilies, that moves us to our right place and moves our right place to us without the friction of self. Will when appearances clamor, pain in the body, lack in the purse, discord in the home, do not wrestle the shadow, recognize it as suggestion, not law, impersonalize it, refuse to grant it authority. Then turn within and abide. No formulas, no trying to make truth true. Just the gentle, alert awareness of I am. In that awareness, fear loses oxygen, and a deeper poise takes the field, not with might nor with power, but by the Spirit that quietly goes before to prepare the place and follows after to gather the fragments, so that nothing is lost from that poise. Something simple becomes clear. We go to God for God, not for things. When we approach the invisible with a shopping list, health, money, success, we are still confessing two-ness, a needy self, and a separate deity who dispenses favors. That sense of separation is the only famine. True prayer is not the attempt to move a reluctant power, it is the willingness to be moved by presence. We lay down the project manager mind and enter the sanctuary of silence, where the I that is God reveals itself as our very life, our law, our sufficiency. Going to God for things tightens the knot, because desire for effect implies belief in lack. The more intensely we grasp for a condition, the more reality we grant to its absence. This is why so much religious effort exhausts sincere hearts. They are trying to make truth perform on demand. But the infinite is not our instrument, we are its transparency. When the goal of prayer shifts from acquisition to communion, the heart unburdens. We are no longer manipulating appearances, we are consenting to recognize reality. In that recognition, lack loses its premise, sickness loses its assertion, fear loses its theater. Communion is not speech heavy, it is listening. Father, reveal the self, is not a tactic, it is an attitude. We sit, we soften, and we yield the final word to the presence. Words may begin the turning, but it is the silence that completes it. Sometimes a phrase erases, I am here, I and the Father are one, be still. Not as affirmation to produce a result, but as a bell that gathers attention back to the holy center. The fruit of this turning is felt as a warmth, a quiet rightness, an effortless sufficiency that needs no proof. Then, as Scripture promises, all these things shall be added. Forms of good appear, employment, harmony, healing, yet they arrive as byproducts, not prizes. We do not measure God by the bank account or the medical report. We recognize such changes as the natural outpicturing of an inner alignment. When the sun rises, shadows rearrange. The sun is not congratulated for moving furniture. Likewise, when awareness remembers itself as God, the scene brightens, and the mind no longer holds the world by the throat. Gratitude becomes pure, not thank you for things, but thank you for thyself. Consider the body. If pain is present, going to God for relief subtly affirms pain's authority. Turning to God for God lets the sense of a separate suffering self dissolve in the presence that is whole. Often healing follows, sometimes endurance deepens, always peace becomes available. Consider supply. If we seek money, we bow to money as cause. Turning to the presence, we witness supply as the activity of grace, ideas, opportunities, right relations, without fear of depletion, because its measure is not coin but consciousness shining as sufficiency. This is not asceticism. We do not despise forms, we release them from the burden of being our life. We love, we work, we create, but we no longer ask people, positions, or possessions to perform the function of God. We discover a love that needs nothing back to be itself, a work that is play because it is expression rather than survival, a creativity that flows without self-concern because the source is infinite. In that climate, "Thy will be done" is not resignation. It is joy in the spontaneous rightness of what unfolds when we refuse to steer by fear or greed. And the heart is steadied enough to take no thought and let grace arrange the forms. Out of that poise, it becomes beautifully plain we go to God for God, not to bargain for outcomes or to decorate our lives with more agreeable effects. When the heart turns to the holy just to be with the holy, something unclenches. The strain of getting is replaced by the sweetness of being. Prayer ceases to be a project and becomes a presence, no longer a transaction, but a communion. Instead of asking a distant deity to deliver parcels to a needy self, we yield to the one life that is already expressing as our being. Here the sense of two-ness softens. The petitioner dissolves into the presence that hears and answers as one wanting things from God quietly sustains the belief that good is elsewhere. Even noble desires, health for a loved one, provision for a household, can keep attention hypnotized by the picture, as though the picture had authority. Turning to God for God withdraws that misplaced authority and returns primacy to the invisible cause. We are not dismissing human needs. We are refusing to enthrone them. In the light of communion, needs are met as shadows yield to sun, not as prizes won by proper phrasing or fervent insistence. Communion is a listening more than a saying. Words may begin the turning, reveal the self, "Here I am," but the heart of prayer is the hush that follows. We do not use divine names as levers. We let silence speak its own name within. Sometimes a warmth arises, sometimes just a clear stillness with no message at all, yet it satisfies more deeply than any answer could. That satisfaction is not emotional, it is the felt recognition that the source is present, whole, and self-complete. From this recognition, gratitude ripens into purity. We are no longer thankful for objects as proofs, we are grateful for the presence as truth. What gratitude thus unhooks from conditions and becomes a steady atmosphere. Thankfulness for being, for the fact of God, for the is-ness that needs no accessory to be sufficient. In that atmosphere, even our service changes character. We do not help to fix people or improve the world by will. We witness the Christ already there and cooperate with its natural unfolding. Consider work. When we go to God for success, worry accompanies our effort and outcomes tyrannize the heart. When we go to God for God, work becomes expression rather than survival. Ideas present themselves without strain, timing is apt without scheming, and relationships loosen from demand into mutual blessing. Consider love. Seeking God to secure affection keeps fear secretly in charge. Seeking God to know God reveals a love that does not need to be reciprocated to be full, and paradoxically it attracts right companionship because there is no grasping in it. Even in crisis, the rule holds. If we rush to spirit only to remove pain, the pain remains the center of gravity. If we turn to spirit to behold spirit, the center shifts. Sometimes the form changes swiftly, sometimes it lingers. Always a peace descends that is not at the mercy of conditions. That peace is the sign we have touched reality, and from that touch a new orientation is born, not to manipulate appearances, but to rest in the cause that forever expresses as harmony where the mind had been counting stresses and demands. To live this way is to choose the vine rather than the fruit, the well rather than the bucket, the sun rather than the beam, and from that choice, what different intelligence begins to steer attention and action to. Take no thought is the natural consequence of that communion. It does not mean indifference, laziness, or neglect of duty. It means the cessation of anxious mental engineering. Thought as worry and outlining presumes separation and tries to bridge it with plans and pressure. Taking no thought is consenting to the fact of omnipresence, to the Father within as the only actor, law, and life. In that consent, mind loosens its grip on outcomes and returns to its rightful office. A clear, receptive transparency for the rhythms of grace begin with small obediences. In the midst of tasks, pause for a breath and release the compulsion to decide, to figure, to fix. Do not suppress thoughts, let them pass as clouds. Do not correct feelings, let them rise and fall like waves. Attend instead to the quiet aliveness that remains when you do not chase the mental parade. In that soft awareness, a wordless assurance registers. From that assurance, the next right movement often appears of itself. An email to send, a call to make, what a door to close, a walk to take. Without inner push, let grace arrange the forms, means we no longer outline answers. We offer availability, not agendas. The infinite, unhindered by our timetables, brings together people, ideas, and sequences with an elegance the personal mind could never enforce. Sometimes the arrangement looks like a sudden opening, sometimes it looks like an apparent delay that ripens character and clarifies purpose. Either way, the hallmark is effortlessness, a rightness free of strain, a fit that does not require argument or defense. This way of living is deeply practical. Bills are paid, bodies are cared for, responsibilities are met, but the motive power is different. We act, yet the sense of doing diminishes. We speak, what yet words feel given rather than manufactured. Even correction, when needed, is delivered without heat, because it is not the ego defending itself, but truth adjusting its own expression. The result is a freedom from the exhausting vigilance of self-management, replaced by a quiet trust that the order of life is trustworthy. When fear flares, as it will, do not wrestle with it. Acknowledge it as impersonal suggestion and let it be. Return attention to presence, even for 10 seconds, and then proceed with the simple duty at hand. The bird still gathers its twig, the lily still drinks the light. In the same way, we move through the day doing what is ours to do, declining to add mental friction to the doing. Discovering to our surprise that what once felt heavy is light, when carried without the cargo of anxious thought. Over time, no thought ripens into a native stance. Planning becomes listening, effort becomes flow. Control relaxes into cooperation with an intelligence that is always ahead of us and within us, preparing, guiding, fulfilling without fanfare or fatigue. As this cooperation with grace matures, a subtler correction takes place. Spirit is not a power over powers. The moment we imagine using truth to defeat error, we have created two forces and slipped back into the dream. Goldsmith reminded us that God is not a power to be wielded, but presence to be realized. Appearances, sickness, lack, discord are not powers, they are suggestions, hypnotic pictures without law, substance, or cause. To set spirit against them is to grant them reality and then ask infinity to stage a contest. The master's instruction is simpler: resist not evil, withdraw belief, not compassion, strip the picture of borrowed authority, and rest where omnipresence leaves nothing outside itself, no power over means we do not mentally batter problems with affirmations, visualizations, or psychic pressure. We are not trying to send energy at a person or condition. That is still the arm of flesh, even when it wears spiritual vocabulary. Instead, we return to the secret place and consent to the realization of one power. In that light, the appearance is seen as a shadow without source. We do not curse the shadow or argue with it, we simply do not step into it. The treatment, if any, is impersonal. No law supports this suggestion, no cause sustains it, no substance forms it, for God is all and beside the all is nothing. Consider the body. To declare spiritual truths at a symptom in order to subdue it keeps the symptom central. Turn, instead, to the eye that is life itself. Rest there until the sense of a private sufferer relaxes into presence. Often harmony registers as ease. Sometimes the picture changes slowly, but the essential act is the same, refusing to grant a second power. Consider relationships. Do not use prayer to bend another's will or to attract a certain outcome. That is manipulation. See the Christ where the personality seems to be, and let your own heart be cleansed of fear and demand. For in the atmosphere of one power, coercion has no function even with collective conditions. Politics mark its storms. We refuse the temptation to hurl metaphysical thunderbolts. We do not campaign in consciousness to make our side win. We behold the unreality of two powers, acknowledge omnipresence where the news reports turmoil, and then listen for our simple, human part to play. Sometimes it is silence, sometimes it is a letter, a vote, a helping hand. But we never try to use spirit to overtake another will or to secure advantage. To do so would fasten us again to the wheel of cause and effect. The Christ never conquers, the Christ reveals, and in revelation the false premise dissolves of itself. Notice how peace departs the instant we start to oppose. That loss is the signal that we have left the sanctuary of one and entered the courtroom of two. Return at once. Lay down mental weapons, even the polished spiritual ones. Be still and let presence announce itself where the mind had spotted a problem. Often a soft recognition arises. There is no power in that appearance because there is no law to support it, no cause to source it, no substance to form it. From that recognition, kindness flows without strain, action is clean of self-assertion, and the day proceeds under the quiet government of what needs no defender. That government announces itself as silence, not the absence of sound, but the presence that does not need words to be known. Abiding in silence is not a technique, it is a yielding of the mind's insistence to think its way to God. Awareness, simply aware of itself, is prayer. It is the holy pause in which the personal relaxes and the eye that is God shines without strain. Here, the heart is not pushing, pleading, or performing. It is resting in its native atmosphere, receiving the fact of omnipresence as immediate and sufficient. Let it be simple. Sit for a few minutes or for a few breaths between tasks and do nothing to improve the moment. No affirmations, no visualizations, no bargaining. If a gentle phrase helps gather attention. Father, reveal the self. I am here. Let it sound once, then fall silent and listen. The listening is the prayer. It is not listening for a message. It is listening to being. Thoughts will come and go. Do not chase them, do not resist them. Let the mind be the sky and thoughts the passing weather. Present, receptive, unhurried, you discover a quiet aliveness that asks for nothing and lacks nothing. This silence is portable. It does not require a monastery or a bell. Carry it into email and errands, into conversations and corridors. Before you answer, drop into the inner hush for a second. Let the answer rise from there. Before you enter a room, pause at the threshold inwardly, let presence enter first. While walking, feel the ground, notice the breath, and let attention rest back into the simple I am. These brief returns are not interruptions, they are repairs to the torn fabric of attention, and over time the fabric holds without fraying. Do not measure the period by sensations. Sometimes the silence feels warm, sometimes cool, sometimes like nothing at all. Do not judge. The prayer is not the feeling, it is the abiding. Even distraction, when noticed without resistance, becomes part of the prayer because the noticing is already awareness being aware of itself. When restlessness spikes, widen, soften, and be willing to be exactly as you are in God. That willingness is surrender, and surrender is the open door through which grace registers itself as peace. In this abiding, the practice of the presence becomes natural. You remember, you forget, you remember again. Each return shorter, gentler, more immediate. Over days and months, a background sense of rightness begins to accompany you. Decisions simplify. Speech slows where haste once ruled. Kindness arises uncoached. You are not trying to be spiritual. You are letting the spirit that is your life have its say in the foreground of living. The fruit is not spectacle, but stability, a quiet heart in the midst of change. A steady friendliness toward the moment as it is night and morning are tender hours for this. On waking, do not lunge for the day. Rest a breath in the silence that is already awake. At night, let the day slip from your shoulders and return attention to the one who kept the day. These bookends teach the hours between how to stand. Yet even if you forget all day, one sincere second of return resets the compass. There is no quota. Presence is not counting, it is offering. To abide is also to listen in relationships. While another speaks, consent to be the spaciousness that hears. Do not prepare your reply. Let the silence hold both hearts. Often what needs to be said is given whole, simple, and free of strain, or it is shown that nothing needs to be said at all. In this way, awareness itself becomes prayer for the world, not as intervention, but as illumination. The quiet acknowledgement that where anyone seems to stand is holy ground, because only the one is there,